Welcome to our latest update on the ongoing war in Ukraine from the War Insider. The 357th day of the war has begun. The main news for the morning of February 15th: the fighters, more tanks, and anti-aircraft defense for Ukraine. Results of the meeting of ministers in Ramstein. Putin's close circle is negotiating with Ukraine. But first, an overview of the map of military operations in Ukraine. On the border with Belarus, no changes. The National Security Council of Belarus appealed to PACE regarding the decision to complicity in the aggression against Ukraine. Considering that the Belarusian constitution states that the subject excludes military aggression from its territory towards other countries, they themselves do not respect either the constitution or their independence. Launching missiles, using aviation, and providing their territory for the implementation of aggression against Ukraine is certainly not participation for Belarus. Svartovay sector Russians are carrying out diversionary attacks on Hrynikivka from the occupied areas of Plochanka, Chervenopopivka, Jitlovka, and Kremina. The enemy is conducting offensive operations aimed at displacing our forces from the left bank of the Jerbets River. British intelligence reports that the Russian army cannot concentrate enough forces for this assault. Bakhmut sector: the Russian army is developing an offensive on Zalizniansk and Paraskiviv. The Ukrainian armed forces were able to stop the Russians on the road. The road no longer plays any logistical role, but it is a situational front line. The main task of the enemy there is to displace the Ukrainian army from Paraskiviv. Enemy assault actions in the direction of Razdolivka and Vasaloy are unsuccessful. Intense fighting continues in the eastern part of Bakhmut. In the Ivanivka area, the Russian army is concentrating reserves and immediately sending them into battle, but all attacks are repulsed. This is what the wreckage of the Russian army plane looks like after it was shot down by Ukrainian air defense forces near Bakhmut. The Russian army also miraculously avoided another terrorist act when they struck at the center of the humanitarian aid distribution in Konstantinivka. Usually, humanitarian aid is distributed there, but at the moment of the arrival, there were no people there. Avdiivka sector: the Russian army is storming the western outskirts of Novobakhmutivka. Large Russian forces are concentrated on the assault of Krasnohorivka, and it is extremely difficult for soldiers of the 110th Separate Brigade, as the Russians have found a vulnerability in the defense and regularly close it with live forces. The occupiers have taken several positions south of Pervomaysky. A heavy and massive assault on Nevelsk has begun. The situation near the village is very difficult. In recent days, the Russians have begun a massive assault on the center and south of Mariinka, but Ukrainian artillery successfully repels front breakthroughs. They repel them so skillfully that the Russians abandon their wounded. The situation in Mariinka is also very difficult. Tavria and Kherson sectors: no changes on the front line, but the Russian army continues to shell the villages and towns near the front with artillery. In Kherson, the occupiers shelled a hospital, and in Berislav, they hit an ambulance station, according to the head of the Kherson region. Over the past day, units of the defense forces repelled attacks by occupiers in the areas of more than 20 settlements. According to the General Staff of Ukraine, losses of occupiers on February 14th amounted to 690 military personnel. In addition, over the course of the day, the Russian army launched 2 missile strikes on civilian infrastructure in the Donetsk region, and 3 air strikes. In addition, 68 enemy rocket attacks were recorded, in particular, on civilian objects in the Kherson and Mykolaiv regions. In turn, Ukrainian aviation struck areas of concentration of personnel and military equipment of Russians 8 times during the day. Ukrainian rocket launchers and artillery struck the area of concentration of living force, 3 ammunition depots, and 2 radio-electronic warfare stations, in particular, the Palantin radio-electronic warfare complex, which was adopted by the Russian army only in 2019. Russia is deploying planes to the borders with Ukraine to support a new offensive, according to the Financial Times. According to the publication, this indicates that Russia is preparing to use its planes and helicopters to support its weak ground offensive. Norway will transfer 8 Leopard 2 tanks and up to 4 special-purpose tanks to Ukraine, according to the country's Ministry of Defense. Greece has transferred 20 BMP-1s and ammunition to Ukraine, according to the Greek defense minister. Germany will deliver 2 more Iris-T air defense systems to Ukraine next month, according to the German Ministry of Defense. Additionally, Germany is establishing production of ammunition for the Gepard anti-aircraft self-propelled gun to supply Kiev, and has signed contracts with Rheinmetall for the production of ammunition for Ukraine. Russia has already lost strategically, operationally, and tactically, said Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff General Mark Milley. In 10 days it will be a year since Russia started an unprovoked, full-scale conflict. Putin thought Ukraine was an easy target, and he would go unpunished. Putin was wrong. Ukraine remains free and independent. NATO and the coalition have never been stronger than they are now. Russia is in global isolation. Ukraine has inspired the world with its courage and resilience. The U.S. and its allies will help the Ukrainians transition to a counteroffensive in the spring, said U.S. Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin. All countries around the world continue to ramp up efforts and consider new solutions for military support to Ukraine. Together, this contact group makes it clear that we will support Ukraine in its fight. We will help Ukraine transition to a counteroffensive in the spring, Austin said at a Ramsden format meeting. He also announced that tanks from Germany, Poland, Canada, Portugal, Spain, Norway, Denmark, and the Netherlands will be supplied to Ukraine. The U.S., Germany, and the Netherlands will supply Patriot air defense systems, while France and Italy will provide SAMP-T systems. Other countries will supply ammunition. The Netherlands does not rule out supplying F-16 fighters to Ukraine, said Minister of Defense Kaya Ollengren, adding that this will be discussed with the U.S. At the same time, the German defense minister announced that the issue of fighters would be considered in 3 to 4 months, and that the focus now is on strengthening Ukrainian air defense. German Defense Minister Boris Pistorius told Tajazau that planes are not currently the most important area of assistance to Kiev. If the sky over Ukraine is safe in the next 3 to 4 months, then we can talk about all further steps. Only then does it make sense. The issue of fighters will certainly be discussed in Brussels, he said. This is all the news for today. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button if you enjoyed the video. We'll be back with more updates and information tomorrow. Thanks for watching.